really don't like the term plus size. I mean, if you're an extra extra small, are you called a minus size? No, you're not. I mean, why, because you wear a size bigger than an extra large, should you be relegated to a different store, a different shop, a different section of the store, a different brand? Why should you have to shop for clothes that either look like your grandma should be wearing it or it's from the Avril Lavigne punk rock collection? I'm tired of this. I really wish that there was a brand, just one brand, that catered to women of all sizes, the same cuts, the same colors, the same materials. Oh, wait. I work for that company. I want to share that with you guys really, really quick. If you're looking for a company that cares about women, all women, made for women, by women, to fit all women, then you have to know about Saavi. That's Savvi, Saavi. We are a women's luxury athleisure wear brand that caters to women of all shapes and sizes. And not only that, our clothes can be customized, tailored, and altered for women who wear breast prosthetics, limb prosthetics, wear medical devices, and for the trans community. Every woman deserves to be able to wear beautiful clothes and have her dignity and confidence remain intact. So if you haven't shopped with Saavi yet, you're missing out. Reach out to a brand partner today, and we can help you get $25 off your first order. It's time that fashion caught up to the rest of the world. It's time that we talk about inclusivity.
And well, welcome to Dr. Margaret and Reverend Katie Speaks this evening on this fine Saturday evening on Soma Fusion Media. And tonight we are going to be talking about what every parent needs to know about psychic development and their children's abilities. And we know that the sixth sense and foresight and telepathy, whatever you want to call it, the concept of psychic abilities is a fascinating one. Although controversial, we do know that, and we'll explain why people can see from different perceptions. But while some psychic powers such as a bunch of nonsense, there are other people that truly believe in it. And as a parapsychology teacher, as well as Margaret, we are both going to educate you today. And no matter where a person stands on this, no one can deny that it definitely makes for a very interesting discussion. And interestingly, there are actually more and more studies going on that back up the idea that there may actually be something more going on that we just don't understand yet. And that is the whole nature of why we do this show, so that we can educate you. And of course, it's not just adults. It also includes children that have psychic abilities, and we all know that there are very many traits out there. We could go into things like the indigo children, the star children, or crystal liquid children. And of course, I would like to mention this book right here, Margaret's book. Do check it out. It is called Discover Your Baby's Spirit. And it is all about how every child is joined to a mother before birth, and through the power of their individual soul structure and their earthly personalities, we can find out all about what the hero, the star, the indigo, crystal, and liquid children are, and how they are being born into this current time period. And so with that said, Margaret,
Well, I was just enjoying myself watching you hold up my book, because with your nice background, it also is taking the background out of the book. So it looks like your child is in 3D. It was really good. Yeah, I know it's very normal now for mothers to worry about whether their baby's going to come out whole, and whether they're going to choose a boy or a girl. And you can go into all these different scenarios that we can talk about in getting a baby. But once the baby comes out, that's a whole different ball game. So if it's okay with you, Katie, I'd like to talk about birthing, you know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because when the baby is in the amniotic fluid and it's just floating around, it's not touching mummy, it's feeling mummy through vibration, which is sound. They hear mummy talking, daddy talking, they can, because their hearing's working. And if you think about being in a swimming pool, it's like when you're swimming underwater and you can hear these voices, or the kiddies playing, but you can't quite hear what they're saying, but the vibration, it's a voice, so that kind of thing. Well, babies in the womb are not idiots. We have to remember that their spirit is in there, and their spirit has lived many, many lives before. And of course, there's people listening that won't necessarily think about reincarnation. And some people don't even believe you live more than one life. But the thing is, it's proved time and time again that we all have these. I feel like I belonged in Egypt a long time ago, or I was in Africa, something like that. And when I was born, to be psychic was strange. It was like, if you can do what I could do, which is read people to, and I could talk and tell them messages, small as they were accurate. And it's like, how could she do that? Well, today it's different, because I'm not an anomaly anymore. I'm your usual everyday person. And these kids that are coming out of the womb are amazing. So why I wanted to talk about the womb is that when the amniotic fluid comes away, then the baby has the first sense of touch, right? And as the mother's contracting and pushing the baby out, and of course pain is the glory of it, because pain embellish to the baby, and it does have pain, by the way, life. It's a stimulant. And without a fear of pain, you wouldn't have a fight to be born. So baby's pushing away. And as they're coming out, it's stimulating the soul structure coding that we mentioned in my book in the beginning, Discover Your Baby Spirit. And so by the time the baby's actually out, and here's the difference between my generation and the generation today, babies back in those days were sleepy babies. Right, and to coochie goo, and it's like and then either cry or fall asleep. But today, when the babies come out, they got their eyes open, they're looking at you. It's like, oh, so that's what you look like, kind of thing. And they're really taking an image picture, and the brain is stimulated to work from the moment the amniotic fluid is drained from the womb. And so we've got babies coming out now who are so instinctive, intuitive, the way I was. Because remember, in my book, I mentioned how I was held after the bomb blew up, and nurses came and held me and got healed. I mean, I don't remember a thing. It's just what my mother told me. But the bottom line is that's what babies are coming out like today. So, a mother could be in an awful mood, and that baby comes out and she holds it in her arms, and suddenly it's heaven. And it's not about forgetting the pains of the birthing. It's about unity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when the mother holds that baby in her arms, she's using psychometry, and the baby is using psychometry. So for those who don't know, psychometry is the sense of feeling energy. So when you think about the baby in the womb beforehand, it was feeling mother's energy, but it wasn't having touch. So now it's got the feelings of familiarity of being in the womb, plus mum outside holding baby. And depending on what she's feeling, baby is going to then, right then and there, kick into happy or sad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have to admit that when I had my first son, I was happy to have a baby, obviously, but my ex wanted a girl. Out pops my Neil. And so it was like, oh, I wanted a girl. And I could hear that outside. And I immediately felt sort of depressed, not emotionally depressed, but you know what I mean? You've had a baby, your emotions are up and down. So I was like crying a little bit that I hadn't satisfied him.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I got a baby that's born 2 weeks late. So he's hungry, no milk, and in me. And they were giving him, believe it or not, 2 ounces, 4 ounces, and then 6 ounces that first day of his life. And he gobbled it all down. And he would cry. He was a crying baby a lot. And being my first, what do I do with this little baby? What, you know, and I'm tense, you know, because you don't know what you're going to do. I gave my son a full wham of negativity that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it. Because you're a young mom, you're 21, you don't know what you're doing, you know, and so on. So, you know, a lot of babies come out with that psychometry, and because they're not feeling that joie de vie, the joy of life, they're actually feeling the sorrow of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that my son grew up, no matter how much loving and he got everything the others got, his will is strong. Don't tell me what to do. I know better. All that stuff, because somewhere in his early birthing with me,
Mm-hmm.
he kicked into his coding, I'm my own boss.
Yeah.
Now we all have a coding. Have you ever thought about what your coding would be?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, when I went through the birthing process, I mean, I'm coming from a perspective where I have given birth to 5 children, but I never actually got the chance to go any further than just holding going through the motion of being pregnant. By the time it came to the birthing process, I had 2 of my children didn't want to come out. 3 of my 3 of the other 3 were all emergency. So I never actually got to get to go through the process of actually going through labor. So that is something that I can't relate to anything. So,
And you might add here, because it's very important for a lot of mothers who are listening, that you did lose your baby. And that's a very, very sad thing. And I always cry when I get emotional. But in another sense, I'm written in books that when that happens, it's a lesson for the mother more than it is for the baby. And the baby hasn't had any intentions to live on because they are prepping for a future life.
exactly.
And there's 101 different reasons why. It could be they ended their life tragically in some way, either deliberately or not, and they never got to complete that past life. So they want to come back and touch the earth just to complete it. Or it might be they just want to teach mom a lesson, or it might be that they actually want to prepare for a more advanced life by catching up on what we're like now on earth.
Exactly. And I mean, for me, though, it was a harrowing process. And the last thing that you want someone to do is to come up to you and say, well, this happened for a reason. And this, and it was like as if it was meant, without taking consideration for the mother and what she's going through and the trauma that she's experiencing. And so I had that happen to me. And after that, my body started to really shut down. And when it starts to shut down, you have all sorts of things go wrong. You know, you're supposed to be preparing for birth. You're supposed to be, you're supposed to, your breast milk is supposed to come through. All of that you're supposed to experience. And it becomes even more frustrating when you are going through a stillborn birth. But then again, I also had the same thing happen with my other children. I went through the whole frustration. Okay, now I've given birth. What do I do now? This is a new experience. How do I get through it? Why is my baby crying? Is my baby looking for me? Is my baby hungry? We are trying to constantly figure out what the child needs. And while our body is trying to succumb to the fact that our body is trying to produce what the baby needs, but our body's not responding the way that it should.
Exactly. I know I never got the breast milk for the times I was going to feed, and they'd already decided I couldn't feed and give me stuff. And then the one time I did make the choice because of the issues I'd had with the others, I decided, no, I'm not going to put myself through all that again, no milk and the stress of all of that. And lo and behold, because I made that choice, I was flooding. But I couldn't give him anything because I'd had the medicine, which brings me to understanding that when a baby is finally out, even if there isn't the, what's it called, the first part that comes out, I can't think of the word right now. This happens to me, I go blank. The what?
The umbilical cord.
No, I'm talking about the milk before it comes. There's it's a word for it. It's a scientific word. I can't think of it. Never mind. Sorry. This happens to me, especially when I got spirit in my head. I can't find my words. I've got their words and so on. But anyway, so the first thing that Mum's going to do is put her on the breast, or him on the breast. And so what actually happens is the mouth is the absolute content, self-awareness, stimulation to the brain. I'm here. Okay, so the act of sucking, and I'll go fast forward a bit further here, also teething, all these things are the brain stimulating and working with the psyche, with the spirit self, to get used to being in this body. And we don't think of a young baby lying there feeling, I don't know where I belong here, I don't know who I am, and they're going like this all the time, you know. And you don't know, they're not thinking words. For all you know, they could be thinking alien language. we don't know where they're coming from, you know, because we don't have that, oh, I've known you in a past life, or you know, we were in the spirit world together and we were making plans that I would be your mom and you would be my uncle and something, you know. But we have actually done all that. So when that baby pops out and is now on the breast, they're stimulating their brain to function with the alimentary tract, digestive system. And when that kicks in, then, you know, poo-poo and pee-pee comes out. That stimulates the base chakra to go up to the brain and say function. So until the baby loses the inner stuff that we call it the packing for people who aren't listening, that keeps the baby in the womb and so on, because it's not pooping in the womb, you know, so all this has to come out. And that first evacuation stimulates the brain to survive.
So I have a question. So if we were to, we're talking about psychic development and psychic awareness of the evolution of how a baby is created, and then after what happens biologically to the reaction of a child that's come into this world. For those people who don't understand what the connection is between psychic awareness and ability, how do we give it to them in such simple terms that there is a connection?
Well, it's always difficult because I've been all over the world, you know, teaching in different languages and different religions. And sometimes it's quite shocking what some people believe, you know, because it comes from a religious background, no matter where we are. In terms of like ancient caveman, he went out and looked up at the stars, or like we saw in Roots, here to this great sky is this baby. And while we know, we have this knowing within us that we belong to something, here on earth, this is like the playground for the battle between the dark and the light for our world and what we understand about our humanness. when a baby is born into the body, we always think, oh, a little innocent thing, but they're not. They can't talk yet, they can't tell you anything, but they actually know they've arrived. And those first 2 years, during the growth period of being able to go from flopping around like a jelly to being able to sit up, crawl, and walk, all that is cellular neuromuscular memory, which is instilled from coding from the spirit world and past life, B from the mother's actions, C from the father's side, because there's all the genes on that side as well. And then its own awareness of its journey, why it's here and what it wants to do. So when you think about all that information, somewhere in the back of this brain, back here, or in the midbrain where it's survival mode, you have to realize anybody who's born has to go through, I've arrived, I'm aware, I can see, hear, touch, feel, assuming they're normal. And those have to be stimulated. So when mum's feeding baby in the mouth is stimulating the sense of smell, right? Mm-hmm. And as the sense of smell is working, they're trying to focus their eyes on what they're seeing. Of course, mostly you're just seeing a lot of a boobie. but once they get to that look around, and I've seen a baby only, in fact, I want to tell a story, twins born to one of my girls. And I held one, they weighed exactly the same. And I held one child and she felt light as a feather. I held the other child and she felt heavy. And as they grew up, as they grew up, we're coughing and clearing our throats because we've been mothers. As they grew up, I could see that the one that was lighter and softer was more withdrawn and observing and watching, whereas the one that was heavier was more like, I'm getting involved, I want to do that, I want to try that. So even though they're in the womb together, and this is a very valid point, you could have triplets, you have quadruplets, you could have however big you want to be, but not one of those babies is identical in their emotions and their mind and their coding. They may look physically identified as identical, but they're not encoded with the same thing, and they will bounce off one another. So people ask me, well, what happens while they're in the womb? Because there's one mum, two babies, let's say, and they're all exposed to mum and dad's DNA. How come they come out differently? Well, the bottom line is we have coding from the spirit self. I won't go into all the detail of the coding now, but we have the coding from the spirit world that is not relative to the ancestors' modes to reenact them out, but rather to take the ancestors' ways of personality and whatever they did in their life and use it according to the choice of the individual child spirit who wants to come. So if a child wants to be active, like the one twin I was talking about, their coding is going to make sure they go on that very physical pathway, while the other one is intellectually working things out. So yeah, we have intellectual babies and we have emotional babies. And emotional babies are physical types, and the intellectuals, they don't worry about their appearance, they worry about their health, what's going on inside, or what everyone else is thinking about them. So there's a basics here of when that baby pops out, having got mummy's milk and having gone through the birth canal. So we got psychometry and we got smell going on, this clairsentience and taste, milk. Clairsentience is the state of tasting and smelling. That stimulates, as I said, the digestive system. So the next thing we need to do is to look around it. So that's clairvoyance. We see. And a baby today, as I said, can focus in. They can see your details, whereas my generation, it was blurred. And then the last is clairaudience, hearing. So if you're, should we say, pregnant and you're rowing with your husband and screaming your head off, baby's exposed to screaming. And yes, baby's going to come out screaming, but they can't speak words yet. They can't tell you what they think of you or something. So there's insecurity, isn't it? So they cry a lot. Mums who are soft and quiet and tender and everything's going smoothly and she's enjoying getting the room ready and so on, all those kinds of things, then she's calmer, the baby comes out calmer. It's a mirror image. That's one of the laws of karma. Each of us must mirror image one another. So we always find people we like, and we always find people we don't. But what we don't realize is that we don't like ourselves. What did you say? I didn't hear that.
That's very, very true. So, you know, is that the same reason why we would give birth for, you know, in terms of to the mirror image of, say, twins?
Yeah, well, you see, if you've got identical twins, they're seeing their own face on someone else. That's unique because most of us, I mean, if I go, oh, I don't want to do, you know, unless I'm looking in there and seeing that, so I'm doing it, I don't see that. But if I have a twin who looks the same as me and she's doing that in front of me, then I can go, oh, that's what I look like. So actually twins become more sensitive, not to the energies of psychic particularly, but to their appearance and what they're going to do together and how they get along. And with research, it's come up that by the time they're about 4 or 5, as different as they'll be, they don't bother about how they look anymore because they don't need to. Whereas like you and I, we would be looking in the mirror even another 10 years going, oh God, I've got all these lines. Whereas a twin would just look, go, you've got lines, that's what I look like. Yeah.
And so what about the telepathic, because we all know that when twins are, just focusing on twins for a second, twins have almost just telepathic abilities between, it's almost like having individual psychic development within ourselves, but at a double capacity.
Well, it can be explained why they're more empathetic in the obvious. Again, it depends on whether they're the physical, a couple that are physical twins as opposed to intellectual twins, because we get both. We get a mixture of all three. But, you know, I was reading just the other day an article in one of the hypnosis magazines that I belong to, the International Hypnosis Federation. And somebody had written there about the twins, and the bottom line is what they were saying was that one twin they were separated at birth. One twin did not know the other twin had a twin, so in other words, in case they were babies. And so one twin was having surgery in another country, and the other one was nothing wrong with her, and all of a sudden she manifested the scars on her body the same as her twin in another place. And it was later that the research, they discovered that they were marking their bodies. And this is not unusual for twins to mirror image a physical thing. Another couple of kids I was working with in my 20s, one broke his bone. I remember, you know, walking around holding this hand up like this because he'd broken his bone somewhere here. And the other one was walking around holding up this hand. You see, I've got a bruise there. Well, that's kind of what he did, you know, and it wasn't as bad as mine, but he had a reddish mark there. And this one was walking around with a white, you know, what do you call it? Plaster of Paris in those days. So you couldn't see that. You couldn't even see the hand. Well, when the thing came off and we looked at them, this one also had a bruise in there. but we didn't know about, because we could only see it on the other twin. So we'll go like, oh, well, for me at that time, because I'm just a medium, you know, I'm listening to spirit and hearing what they say about the mirror image of feelings. And so at that time, he said the feelings identifying gave them the same nervous system, gave them the same pain. So I asked questions about that at the time, and they said, well, while they're in the womb, they're entwined like this. And when they come out, they separate, but they're still entwined. So wherever they are, far apart, you know, they still pick one another up through their spirit, because they've lived together in that confined space for a reason, to learn something. And of course, we could debate the lessons over and over again. There's 101 different scenarios it could be. But ultimately, you know, what in these two I'm talking about, not the ones I was working with, but the two are far apart. According to the article, somehow they'd found one another.
Yeah.
And when they got together, it was like long lost sister forever and ever, you know. But sorry, I keep clearing my throat. You know, when we talk about these kinds of things as adults, we're actually pressing buttons into our own infancy when we popped out. So who knows what we've got in there, from sucking on mummy's boob and having a diaper change and, you know, all the rest of it. You know, we can't remember all that, but our brain does. The deep subconscious part of the brain does remember everything we've ever done. And I once said to one of my students years ago, I said, how many times do you think you've sat on the pot in your life? And she looked at me like, what a silly question. And I said, well, if you stop and think about it, it's probably 3 or 4 times a day at least. And if you multiply by 365, and she you can see her trying to, because she's intellectual, you see her trying to do the math in her head. And I said, you need a calculator for that. We were joking about. Anyway, she came back and she said to me, I didn't know anything. I was just teaching her at the time. And she came back to me and she said, you know what? I didn't tell you, but I've been constipated my whole life. So I said, okay. So she said, well, I suddenly was looking at a prune. And I said, okay, well, prunes work. She said, what do you mean work? I said, so what happened? She said, I ate it. So I said, well, so she said, well, it's the first time in my life I went to the toilet easily. So she said, why did I pick a prune? You know, and I said, your subliminal self knows that that's what you need in your body. And that's one of the things that babies will tell us. You know, mum's feeding with the spoon and she's shoving it in and picking it up and shoving it in. As far as she's putting it in, it's falling out again. And the baby's saying, I don't want that. You know, one of the worst things that I had with my kids was peas and carrots. I think it was something, peas and spinach or something. I couldn't get them to eat that. Brussels sprouts. I don't even like them today.
You know, I like everything that I didn't like back in my childhood, I actually like.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, because we, you know, the things that we are, I would say, force fed, because that's what, you know, our parents at that particular time thought, that in our developmental stages thought that it was great to have. Now you get your taste buds change, you try new things, you grow, you know. And I encourage parents who are going through that process to let your child try as much stuff, introduce them to all of that. If they don't like it, they don't like it. There's always alternatives for everything.
But they didn't know that back when you were small. I mean, you're young enough to be my child. I was doing, even though I was psychic, I was doing what the nurse said. And I'm going to give you an example. My second son, I had midwives living with me, and they just gone through some sort of workshop course or something. They come home. My baby's 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
And they come home with these pots of fruit and whatever. I'm like, we're going to feed the baby. I was like, what? No, it's too soon. You can't feed my baby. He's having bottles and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, they've got a new thought now. You have to feed them. Well, they did. My son enjoyed it. And so he was weaned. He had milk still, of course, all the time. But I mean, he was weaned onto food to eat. Do you know what? Today, he eats and eats and eats. And he's not fat because he's busy. He works and he's carrying, lifting things all the time. But he's always been a big eater. When he was like, I don't know, 9, and the other ones didn't want to eat, he would eat what was on their plate. One day, out of the blue, as an adult, I was over there. I had a few roast potatoes on my plate, and I, without thinking, I just said, "Do you want to finish these up?" You know, and he looked. He said, "Mum, I don't clear anybody's plate anymore. I'm aware that I was pigging out." And it was only then at that moment, because you always click. You know, I thought, "Gosh, those nurses, they taught him that he needed to eat a lot all those years ago."
With me, it was the opposite, because I was told to stay at the table and make sure that I ate English.
Had eaten it all. Yeah.
No, I was told to sit at the table, eat all my food, plus then as a punishment, if I didn't eat, then I would have to overeat everybody else's plate. So I got brought up a little bit differently, you know, each to their own. But what that did in terms of the opposite story to you is it contributed to lifelong problems. And that caused a whole heap of eating habits, and that caused me to have a lap band back 15 years ago. So because it just became out of control. Like my body didn't know if from what and all that kind of stuff. But it also goes on to psychology too, how we bring up our children in accordance to what we think.
Mm.
And we
yeah. And that is a very important sentence, what we think. Because what we think is not what you think, or he thinks, or she thinks. And when we get in conversations as adults, we often find that we're in disagreement and we agree to disagree, or we argue and rant and rave. But actually, you know, whatever we're talking about is history.
Mm-hmm.
And we carry on as though that history is today. And we make all of these rules and regulations about, you know, justifying and explaining, excusing, whatever it is, in some way why we're doing it. But the bottom line, going back to the womb, is that when we come out in those early 24 hours, we have programmed ourselves. Nobody else has programmed us. We have chosen by the energy of our spirit coding to react or interact with whatever's coming down. And that is our very small, slim, I'm going to draw it like that, foundation stone upon which we are going to put all of this, you know, and it's a mountain and we're buried underneath it. And we spend our lives trying to explain and justify why we need to keep all this stuff buried on top of us, us underneath it rather, until around the 40s. And then we start to realize, well, I have more free time and I can do more. And so people generally around your age, you know, come into somewhere around the psyche, unless you're programmed, then it's different, you know, because you were programmed. But a lot of people are not programmed to develop their psyche till they're in their 40s. And so my children's generation, mine are all in their 40s to 50s, they had a basket full of psychic ability through me and all the experiences and the places I was going, and some of them came with me or didn't, depending on what they wanted to do. So, but they were exposed to it. And even though I would have wished that they would read all my books and know all the things that I could teach them, whatever, no, because you see, they didn't come in with a coding to learn from me. They came in with their own coding to have a little bit of what they learned from mum and then go out and try and, shall we say it's not true? And then come back and find out, well, it was true, you know, and then go through that amazed bit and then park it somewhere in their personality as they grew up, where they then would use it later, and not as a not as a psychic, not as a reader, not as a, but in their everyday, just like you are, in the everyday happenings. So, you know, I've seen all of my sons, say, in somebody's house, working on a job, and the person's going through something, and they just turn around and they're there for them in however way they need to be there for them. And I've seen them turn people in from sopping, moaning, lost little women or men into these confident people in just 2 hours, while I'm sitting in the background saying nothing because I never wanted to interfere. And so I learned that no matter how much we try and tell our kids, this is a roadway, go along here, they're going to go along their own roadway, but they're taking with them, without realizing it, what they got in the womb, what they brought into the world with themselves, mixed it together for the first, you know, back in those days when I was a mother, first 25 years. Today it's different. They are mixing it together. Well, you've got youngsters. They're mixing it together, and they're coming to mums and dads and say, excuse me, while they're busy worrying about something, you know, and yes, dear, in a minute, dear, mummy's having a serious conversation here, you know, and they keep on tapping and so on, until you say, well, what is it? And they say, you don't have to worry, it's going to be fine. Can we have ice cream now? And then sure enough, after a day or two, mum finds out everything she was worrying about into nothing. These kids know, even though they don't know the issue, they don't know what's going on with your feelings and thoughts, but they know the outcome.
Yeah.
Have yours done that to you? Told you the outcome?
Not particularly, but I will say, add in addition to you, what you just said, for those who already have gotten the coding within them in their DNA after they're born, those people reject the notion, those children who reject the notion that, you know, this is the way it is and this is how we are supposed to think and feel. That's when we can start walking down the pathway of, okay, we're here for a reason. This is what we may or may not need to do, but we're also here to learn a lesson. And so therefore, instead of going to our parents to seek that wise counsel, wisdom, whatever the case may be, we would be finding out on our own, which is why we have that saying, well, don't say I told you so.
Well, you know, all of us don't want to hear what we don't want to hear, in other words, at that moment, if it comes across at us. But upon reflection, then, you know, if we're meant to remember it and work with it, we do. But let me come back to the babies, because, okay, you're a mum and you've got a toddler, and I've used the extreme example of telling you, don't worry, and I want ice cream. These kids expect to be listened to. And if mom keeps saying, no, in a minute, that is into the child, like being told you're not important.
Yeah, it's neglect and abandonment, which is when they grow up.
Well, they may not feel it's abandonment at that moment, but over time it could be.
Yeah.
But the point is, my son came running. I wrote this in my life story book. My son came running and he'd done a painting. He was full excited, you know, in school, brought it home. I was on the phone with a lawyer, and it was a very important moment, and I could not just stop. And I said to the lawyer, just one moment, and I, you know, that's all I could do. And then I said to my son, put it in the other room, mummy, look in a minute, it's a very important call. So I'd even told him, I was on the phone, it was a very important call. And I went into the living room as soon as I remembered, and went into the living room to find he'd ripped it all up into pieces. Mm-hmm. And I, what do you do this for? Mummy hasn't seen it yet, blah, blah, blah. You know, no, you're not interested. You didn't want to see it. You didn't think it was any good. Years went by, He had some issues that I was helping him with. Won't bore everybody with that. And up came this. I remember you didn't pay any attention to my painting. I mean, he was 5, okay? And so I started to explain it again. He said, Mom, I don't want to hear why you were doing it. He said, to me, you didn't love me. Of course, he admitted, years later, he knew full well I loved him. But in that moment, he didn't think he was lovable. And then with a father who was always drinking, that added to it, because he tried to get more and more love, attention, didn't get it. And he went into, I don't want to talk to my dad, don't want to know anything about him, and so to me, I was trying to patch it up. And I found out no matter, the more I tried to patch it up, the worse it got. That took me back to, okay, what was wrong at the infancy? And I remember standing outside the room because I birthed him, but I couldn't have him because I had to go into an incubator. So I was standing outside the room looking through the glass with my ex, who was still my husband then. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, this child is not for me. This child is for my husband. And they were like cheese and cookies together. They just stuck together all through the younger years until the teenage years came up. And then he started to see things differently. And so, there's a definite difference between those first 7 years or so. It's a bit younger now, but there's definite difference of a child is trying to master their psychic skills, okay? And when they get to be around 7, that's when they start to break away from mother's apron strings. They now start copying dad, which is why mum says, you're always just like your father. And so what happens here is snapping the apron strings, the psyche starts not looking to mother for all the answers, but rather looking outside the box at other people who are going to give answers, i.e. the priest or depends what religion you're in. I won't go to all of those. But every child on this planet, no matter what country they're in, is going to put a model up that will set them, especially a male model, if it's possible, to set them away from the mother so they can learn to be independent. And that's when they're using their psyche to try and find people that will support them. Could be big brother thing, it could be granny and grandpa, live in another country and they want to run away and live with them or something. There's 101 scenarios you could come up with, but it is the psyche in the child's brain box that is going, you need a transformation, you need a change. But they don't understand transformation and change, so they're not hearing those words. They're hearing things like run away, jump on a plane, do something. Do you know about that? So what we're talking about here is that I think is very important is that mums today who are birthing babies need to understand, and as you mentioned my book in the beginning, that there are different types of groups. It's so weird because none of the green and the lovely colors show up. Can you see that in your screen?
Hang on, I'll turn my background off so that everyone can see it.
Oh, it's all right. I just think it's neat.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, that's the innocent baby in the womb, sort of thing. My interpretation before it's about to come out, that's why I put that there. But let's go back into you. Thank you for that. So let's go back into this baby's now taste and smell. They've now focused their eyes. They're now hearing the sounds, and if it happens to be a noisy sound, they're going to jump, right? Mm-hmm. Look what's happening to the body. They're wriggling their hands. So cellular neuromuscular memory from the brain box is working the body, right? It's so subliminal that it's instinctive, right? But in that instinctive energy is your spirit working. And people don't realize it. When you, like, if you're walking down the road and you suddenly feel like someone's following you, you think, oh, I'm being silly, but I've got to look anyway. Well, it might be a spirit guide that's following you down the road. You can't see them when you look around because they're not in this vibration, but you feel them. It's psychometry.
Which brings me to another point. We can go into, we can go into why these occurrences actually happen. And these occurrences actually happen through, obviously, psychic development. We know that children, as they're growing up, they have such occurrences such as imaginary friends. They could be just talking to themselves. But what we don't notice is the capacity. We just think that they're just, children that have active, vivid imaginations. But what we could translate that into is psychic awareness in children, which brings me to indigo children, star children, crystal children, and what they are all about. And of course, for me, I know that I'm an indigo child, have been for a very long time. I just don't come out and label myself with that because it's not, it's not something that needs to be put out there to let everybody know, hey, I'm an indigo child, because the world has enough labels as it is. And so all I can do is provide my gifts to the world without having to go into deep detail about, I'm psychic. I'm very aware. I have gifts and powers. Well, powers is probably not the right word, but gifts that I can offer to the world that give you a keen sense of looking at the world from a different perspective. And so a lot of my work is influencing a lot of the gifts and abilities that I have. Sometimes when I write, it's almost prophetic. And sometimes I look at that because I'm still going through, and you spend a lifetime going through the developmental stages of what your gifts and abilities are in terms of psychic development. And so it's not always that we actually recognize what is really going on, but when we have a keen idea, people like you, Margaret, we can learn from and we can understand. And from a parent's point of view, when we see our child having an active, vivid imagination, how do we know there is more to it?
Well, let me put it this way. First of all, I have to show the difference in time, because you have to realize we're still in the dark ages when it comes to accepting the paranormal by a lot of people across the world, whatever their religion is. And that's partly because of the religion that people have so much judgment about anyone being able to, in quotes, talk to a spirit. If we go back in Christian or Buddhism or Zoroaster or whatever we go, there was always a sage or a guru, someone who turns up and leaves messages. And, word of mouth, for example, is amazing, because you could tell one person, especially something like Facebook today, you can tell one person is all over the world by now in seconds. But even back in those ancient days, word of mouth, travelers went by pony, donkey, or whatever, hither and thither, and took the news. They were the news carriers as well, and carried letters or whatever it was. And if you go all the way back to Egyptians, then you're still seeing the same stories about how there are greater gods, there are the essence or the spirits of animals that are appearing to them, making their effigies of cats and dogs and things and burying them all because they want the afterlife, they want them to be there. So there's always been this subliminal belief that there is God, there is somewhere we go, and there is something we do. And of course, it all got colored with, the religions of the Piscean age and so on. But we're really much bigger than that. We're not religious people. We are spiritual people, and we've got so entwined with religion that we have lost our spiritual self. So COVID is actually opening us up to our spiritual self again. So coming back to the children, I was unusual, but now I see I'm not unusual. I would sit down and draw shapes and sizes, and I would see them in my head, and I was drawing. Well, what I knew later, didn't know at the time, was I had a spirit guide teaching me how to draw. The same as when I sat at the piano. I used to struggle with the music I was learning, and as soon as I let Master Chang in, all over the place, playing Chinese music, I loved it. But the bottom line is that it's not till we surrender our resistance to our spirit self that the spirit self can function. And in my generation, we were blocked. You're not supposed to be able to do this. You're strange. Or you're so gifted, you can never charge for it. And you're a very special person. They put you on a pillar stuff, like put you up there. And it's not what you want to be. I've had people come into my life and I'm working with them and healing them and doing whatever. And they're praising hallelujah me. And I'm saying, stop it. I'm just a healer. I'm just doing what I know. I've studied all this stuff. I've listened to my spirit guides. You too can do it. And that's where they come back with, no, I'm never going to do it. I make all these faces. Well, the kids today, they can do it. Within 2 years old, they're managing the computer. It's my grandchildren are always on mum's phone, playing games and doing whatever. And the bottom line is, I could say to them something like, you've got tummy ache. And they'll say, yes, I've got a block here. And you say, what do you mean you've got a block here? Well, I can feel it. Well, I go like this. I can't feel anything. I'm not being psychic. Sure enough, next morning, I'm doing poo-poo sessions. They're having a real hard time getting their block out. And then you make sense. So I started to realize that, because I've got one family's got 8 siblings in the house, so I got to watch quite a lot of babies growing up and fiddling besides my own, and of course over the years healing other mothers with their babies and so on. And I got to realize just how different the babies are now and watching the changes over time. So when I wrote that book that you held out, the first children that I was looking at were the hero children. Okay, because that's my generation. Oh, we have to put on a suit, we have to go to war, and we have to fight and win the land and put the nasty guy down. You don't have to hold it out. It's actually it was quite a book. There's that one too. Pro life, pro choice, pro spirit. Thank you. Oh, that's the psychic one for development. Yeah, that mums might like to get that one, because you might want to open it and show them a picture of it. That was drawn by me when my kids were about 7, 8, and 3 and 4. And I had to wait for photocopying and everything else to come out for that picture to be reproduced, what you see today. And that doesn't do justice to the color of it, by the way. But that book will teach you how to interpret your images. So let's go back to an infant. An infant is looking at pictures all day long, taking pictures with like a camera lens. So they see mummy miserable face, they see siblings miserable face, they see daddy come home from work miserable face. It's not long before they're walking around with a miserable face, not because they feel miserable, but because they're copying the miserable face.
Because we're not programmed. It's like we're not programmed to know about racism. We're taught it. Everything in life we are taught. And so when we come out, and we say, well, no, that's not right. That when we have a healthy associated feeling of curiosity, that is when we start to learn. And when we learn the lessons, whether it would be life or just what we're doing at that particular time. And so that we can make the right choices in life.
Well, we hope we'll make the right choices. But going back to the hero kid, the hero kid's energy was all about move forward, rush in where angels fear to tread and try and fix it. So wars and all the things that went on during that age. I will say that different ages, we still come back with these particular categories of groups of people. So we have, from my generation, quite a lot of hero kids that are out there sacrificing themselves in some way, shape, or form, whether it's industry, whether it's fighting for rules and regulations, whether it's out there with a gun, or whether it's preaching to, people who are doing something wrong. That was what was considered normal. And then one day I started to meet people who were all like, I'm looking up at the sky. I never felt I belonged here. I didn't fit in with my parents, and they're always looking up at the ceiling or somewhere. And I started to listen to my spirit guides about them, and they were saying, well, these are the sky children. So I said, what you mean, they're alien children? He said, no, what we mean is that they're not accepting the embodiment. They want to escape the embodiment. They want to say, I don't belong here. I belong somewhere else. I'm longing to find that someone else, or that somewhere else on another planet or something. So, these children who are, always trying to escape had a lot of fear in them. And that was because they were post-war babies, and they'd gone through all this kind of thing. And they were the children of war babies. So I saw some of this in some of my children, where the energies was all about run away, run away. Oh, and their friends were like that too, run away, run away. And it wasn't necessarily run away as escape the home, but rather run away from responsibility, run away from cleaning their teeth, running away, whatever it was. I don't want to fit in here. I don't want to do these things. So the hero child would try and save the what is it? I've forgotten my own words. These sky children, these children that are just, I belong somewhere else. So how does a hero child, is he going to come zooming in like, the comic books, so that was a lot of show and tell during that time of comic books and the downtrodden and the rescuing and all this thing going on. The kids lapped that up. Mm-hmm. But we changed. We didn't want any more war. We all grew up, different things happen. So each time we move into a different consciousness, we have to name it. That's how we feel about it. So my generation birthed another generation who were the psychic forerunners, in my opinion. I'm like a teacher dusting my things off the shelf and trying to help with the generations to come. And so it was a battle. There weren't many of us. So there was shall we say, just for the sake of soul structure coding to understand, that a bunch of us up in the spirit world all decide we're going to come down and be teachers, okay? And we're in different countries all over the world, and we're quietly doing our own thing in all the different worlds in our own languages and whatever, okay? But when we get past the heroes and we go into the star child, which is looking up at the great cosmos of all that is, they were coming in with technology in the earliest stages, because stars, rockets to the moon, and that kind of thing. So they were birthing an awareness so we could get off planet. And so, of course, many of those children, the psychic as they were screwed up because they still got the old ways from the hero child. So there we went from the star, we went into the indigo. And the indigo basically came up because of the color blue. And you've got blue sky behind you. We all look up at the sky and the sun's shining, blue sky, So we associate the heavens with blue. And if we're talking to the heavens or spirit guides, guardian angels, whatever you want to call them, then we're the psychic ones who are blue. See, so that became a popular thing in the 70s through the 80s. And then I started to be aware of more babies coming in who were, sort of a handful. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what you would try and tell them to do. No, don't touch me. I don't want to hold your hand. I'm going to climb that wall even though I could fall because you told me so, and sure enough I'll fall. And now I'm making a real racket and I need 400 plasters on it because it's only a tiny scratch. There's all this to-do business with a crystal child when they first came in. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the energy of the crystal children and I can see that they do not mix with the star children or the hero child, because they don't want to be saved. They don't want to go out and save the world, nor do they want to escape the world. They want control of the world. So those crystal children, they were playing up their family members left, right, and center. But what they were really doing is saying, where there's a will, there's a way, right? I'm going to find a new way to live. And they're the mothers and fathers of kids today. And they're the ones who are saying, I don't believe you. I don't believe in the politics. I don't believe in this and that. And it goes on, the medicines and so on. They're exposing all the things that are wrong. And that will be your generation, you see. And now you birth babies and they're coming out as liquid crystal children. And why am I calling them? And I'm the only one I know of that's referred to them other than my students, liquid crystal children. Well, what do you think about your body? All the cells, everything in your body, 70% water. And what we're saying with a liquid crystal child is that through the water, the osmosis that runs through their body, they are able to transform perception from logic to spiritual and bring it out mouth-wise, body-wise, and tell you the truth. But the other four don't necessarily want to hear the truth because they're colored by the old centuries. These kids coming in now, liquid crystal children, they're not colored by the history because they're a new generation that's going to put a foundation stone of a new type of human. Now, we as adults could say, oh, that's a good idea. We need a better world and we need everybody to come into harmony and we want everybody to sit around tables and discuss and work things out. Well, that won't happen until we and our children are gone, because we're still colored in the womb, as I've explained earlier, by the parents and the grandparents. And even in some cases, there are 4 generations alive because we've got great grandparents. So you can see the chain reaction of, I remember when we were young, right? Mm-hmm. And the spinal baby on the end of the line is sitting there going, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't particularly want to know. I don't particularly want to know about history. I want to know about today and tomorrow. And so a lot of the future will be coming out of these babes, with ideas. And by the time they're adult, they will have invented things and putting that out. And we can look back, from the 1940s in my life to now, and there's a tremendous amount of change that's come along on every level, including the psychic ability. But unfortunately, like everything that comes along that's new, i.e. right now the computer and people who are stealing all our information, there's always someone who's going to abuse something, right? Yeah. So in the same way, there are people who are abusing the psyche, i.e. cults. You remember we had all those cults for a while? Did you know anyone that was in a cult? You're probably a bit too young, but they were told you're gonna, for example, we'd kill ourselves and follow a comet, or we'll all kill ourselves and go to heaven. Depending how far back you go, there's always been somebody who's believing in some leader who's telling those people they're a sacrificial lamb and therefore have to do what they tell them. Now, that was the Piscean age, or 3,500 years of Piscean age, but now we're in the Aquarian age. That's not going to wash anymore, because the Aquarian age is, I do what I know should be done. I don't have to be convinced to do it because my psyche is kicking in. What do you think?
I agree with that. I had a question, but I just wanted to let you talk just then.
Sorry, I can't help it when I got info. It pours out me out.
We have listeners, for the listeners who do know some of the categories of the groups of psychic children. Now I know that I know that from what I have researched and studied, there have been very, very similar. And I noticed that when you were talking about it, you kind of went from indigo to crystal children, like just almost meshed it all together. How do we tell the difference between the two of them, even though that you excuse me, you've mentioned it about the generations, but how do we actually tell the difference between the two?
Well, if you're talking about the crystal child versus a liquid crystal child, is a big difference. The crystal child disturbs everything, breaks everything down, says this is no good and I want to create something out of it, and they fiddle and create something. The liquid crystal child knows, and they come in over the top of the crystal child and take what they've created in their fiddling around kind of state between their mood swings and whatever. The liquid crystal child will take their things and move those over into a knowing space where they'll develop something that really works. It's evolution. And who's to say that the hero child won't come back now, but maybe in 100 years, and pick up where the liquid crystal children have left this world, now to save it yet again as it's transformed yet again. So these repeat patterns go on throughout all time. We just have names at this time of these names that I've mentioned, but I've even seen people talking about the diamond children, the rainbow children. People are going to name them according to what they would see and identify with, because maybe they're seeing their auras as opposed to seeing the deeds they're doing. And so we can't say we're 100% accurate on our names, but what we can say is they're used to categorize us so that we understand what group we're in, so we can belong and then join up with other people who are all over the world. Now we can do it through computers and come together and build something. And as you know, you and I would never have met without the computer. Exactly. And here we are, we're building a university online, slowly, but we are doing it. And the whole idea is so that mothers, in this particular case with young children up to 7, we're opening that up for mothers to come on and ask us questions. In fact, if anyone's listening right now, they can go live on us and talk, and we can answer their questions about their individual children, what's going on. Because when one mother is talking about her child, there's probably 800,000 other people in the world going, yeah, my kid does that. I need to listen to this. So, our hope is that we will get a lot of mums who will come on and, ask us questions about, why is my child playing up? Or why is my child angry all the time? Or the opposite, why are they so inventive and so creative? I mean, I've watched kids grow up from toddling, where the teacher was saying they were slow and not really doing well. And then somewhere in their teenage years, they clicked in and went on to be head girl in school. Mm-hmm. And you would never have thought that. The same as my teachers told me, because I was dyslexic, nobody knew about that then, I'm just saying why. that I would never write a book, and she would slash my English to bits. I've got 18 books out there now, you know. So
I can say the same thing too. And hopefully, fingers crossed, by the end of this year, I will have 19 books. I've got currently 12. But by the end of this year, I would have published 19 of my own.
I think this is time for you to mention your drawing. See, now your coding of your child self spiritually came in with that, but you had no idea that you had that skill until you met me, learned a bit about your psychic ability, and up came your skill. That's how it works for the infants too. They hear a few things, then they do it, and everyone's going, "Whoa, aren't you clever?"
That's the interesting part, is that what would be like, what year is it? 9 years ago, if I didn't meet one particular person who encouraged me to write, then I would never have been a writer, because I failed English too.
I know. It's just the same for me.
I do.
My first book I was writing was a novel, and it's out now thanks to you, but I'm doing the other one. But the thing is that we all need someone to come into our lives and shake something in front of our eyes to see them, smell it, taste it, touch it, work with it all over our body. And hey, presto, you wake up one morning, you think, I'll have a go. I'll try. And the next thing you find out you've got a skill you didn't know you had, and you found art. Have you got one handy? Show everybody your artwork.
Well, you talk and I will grab it. It's only just down here, so.
Yeah, okay. So I'll keep talking. So what listeners, I want you to understand is that we all are artistic. We all have creative ability, and we talk about God and the divine essence within us. And so every baby is born with the spark of God in us, in the coding of the soul vibration. So even though you don't know what you're going to do when you become an adult, your spirit does. And here is Katie back with her drawings. I hope they come out well on the computer.
These are the ones, though, that I haven't framed, because the other ones are actually framed on my living room wall. But here's one.
Isn't that amazing for someone who can't draw, period? How long have you been drawing? A couple of weeks?
2 decades. I just didn't tell anybody.
No, that is really good, isn't it? Okay. And she does that in what, 10 minutes?
This one took me about 45.
Oh, it's a longer one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. What else you got? Something else? Oh, I like that one, yeah. The blue jay. And there's no model, there's no thing you were copying, no making mistakes, just drew it perfectly and colored it. And that's very important to pause here a minute and say to these mums, your kids, when they're drawing, even if they're only 2 or 3, in their mind, that image is perfect to them. And what if you encourage them by saying, wow, that's so wonderful, and you can do a lot more whenever you're pleased or happy, have a go, and given time, their psyche, just like your psyche, has kicked in as an adult, but theirs a kick in as a child.
Just to show you the difference, right? So this one here is of me. I just did this just with no visual aesthetics to go with it whatsoever. There's nothing for it. There's nothing behind it. It is just a drawing of a man, which I visualized. Pure imagination for those who are skeptical.
But what is important to point out is, as you hold it up, look at the proportions. It's perfect. You didn't have to erase any of it, right?
I did a little bit of erasing. You can't see it though, because, you know, it's a camera.
Well, what I'm getting at is, though, you know, that when you're truly psychic and you're really into it and you don't let anybody interrupt you. So you're just locked into what you're doing.
Mhm.
And believe you me, I used to draw everybody's spirit guides all the time. That's what everybody wanted. But there, I said to you, see if you can get the spirit guide to draw through you and tell you their name. That's your next step.
Well, the
Yeah.
reason why I was showing you this one is because somebody asked me to do a picture of them. And so I had to, you know, because I've not seen this person for a while. And so I kind of had to look at their photos and that, just for proportionate values and everything like that. But this one here was a self-portrait of someone that I know, that I was told, you know, do your own self-portrait. And then she goes, well, why don't you challenge yourself and do my portrait? And this is exactly what I came up with.
And you had no model or nobody sitting in front of you.
No, I just looked at a couple of pictures of that person, and just for reference, just to jot my mind. And this is what I came up with. And
So,
when she looked at herself, she's like, "Oh my God!"
So what I'm trying to point out here, because this is a very good example of this, is vision. What we've seen, we take. It's like in our brains, we've got 1,000 trillion one pictures in our brain, and each picture is associated with an emotion and with a smell and a taste and so on through our own body. And so there's another one that I like that one very much. So I'll carry on talking. So sorry. The bottom line is we have 1,001 talents in our brain box, but we may never know we've got them because we haven't been sparked by someone giving us something to play with or do. So going back to the children, when you buy them Christmas presents or toys that they really want, and you know they really want it because they're engrossed for ages doing whatever, that is the best present you can give a child, because it stimulates their images to try and get into their imagination and, you know, even illusions. It doesn't matter at that age, and draw whatever they believe is in their brain box, something they can draw. And there's no doubt. So when you say to a child in kindergarten, oh, that's lovely, mummy's picture, who's that? Oh, that's the son, and that's mummy, and so on. They're remembering storybooks and things like that you've shown them before that. And so they're going to start trying to copy what's in their mind. And that's what you're saying here with having an image and having a look-see, but then turning that off and then just drawing. Well, when you get good at this, it takes a while and it takes practice, but when you stop thinking about the images and you just sit down with a pen and paper or whatever it is you're going to use and scribble, not knowing what you're going to draw, you will end up drawing something that you don't even know what you're drawing. And I'll give you some examples of things that I did years ago. And I'm not taking the glory from your pictures because they're fantastic. But what we did was draw upside down and sideways. And you're scribbling away and you don't know, you know, we were children when we were doing it, scribbling away, 4 of us sitting around the four-sided table, you know, kind of thing, playing. And while they were scribbling and they came out with sort of 6, 7-year-old drawings, mine were coming out with like an adult would draw, and I had no idea because I hadn't been comparing Rembrandt or anything, you know, like that, and I definitely hadn't had any education about that kind of thing. And then my mum would come in and she would look at it and she would say, that's very nice, but you didn't get the nose right or something. And she'd try and make it straight or whatever. And one day I remember looking at her and I said, but his nose is crooked. And she went, what? Because I was drawing a spirit guide and she had no idea, because she didn't have an image, see? And so her training from drawing was to straighten everything and make you look gorgeous. And this was a guy that I had during that time who had broken his nose, and it had been drawn like that, but upside down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was saying to you. It's time to experiment and see what you can produce.
See, here's the thing: is that I drew a picture of a woman, you know, because I do like to do naked people, and it has nothing to do with sexuality, but it's an expression of sexuality, but it's not in such a way that it's supposed to be classified as soft pornography or something like that. Art. And so when people saw this popular photo or image, what I drew, the sketch, what people didn't know that there was actually, because they're so used to seeing me draw a perfect body or a perfect symmetrical face. But what they didn't notice was there's actually a flaw. One flaw. Can you see it?
Toes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what though?
Perfect.
The art, we all have the ability to be an artist. We all have the ability to be a musician. We all have the ability to write a book. Everybody. There's no isolation from our talents. We have access, but we have that conditioning where somebody says to us, you're not good on one thing, and we color everything as not good. We're average, you see. So when we are introduced to something, we tend to talk ourselves down and say, I'll never do as good as that person.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that we understand that we're not competing. We're just doing and enjoying ourselves being creative. So come back to the children again, because we haven't even got to the more adult ones yet. The babies, through, able to hold a pen and draw and scribble and play dough and all these things, they're using their fingertips. I did a show, by the way, on fingertips and feet, how important the meridians are and how they connect all our energy. Somebody might want to listen to that. Babies are using this all the time. They're touching you, they're feeding your hair, they're gripping things, they giggle over things, they're programming their brain to remember tactile things. And when you put a crayon in the hands of a child, through their spirit self, they can tap into talents of ancestors. So, for example, you might be tapping into an ancestor that was an artist and you've watched them from above before you were born. Or it might be that you were a wood chopper in a past life and used to carve pictures on trees. I'm just making something up, and you didn't do that. But what I'm getting at is we have the abilities, because we've had many lives, and they're all sort of jumbled up and mixed up within the survival mode of your existence here on this planet. Now, you add to that your ability to connect with people of like mind, heart, soul, and body, to come together and congregate on a issue. We have the power, without shadow of doubt, even if we all just stood in a circle and manifest something new. Now, people can't grasp that because they think it has to appear in the sky and come down and hit us over the head. But it doesn't work like that. If you think about, I use him a lot, Edison, fiddling around for years trying to make that bulb work. If I could take him into Las Vegas right now, what do you think he'd say? Not because there's so many light bulbs, but that there are different kinds now. All as a result of him. And that shows you our transformation in the way we've evolved with energy. So now that we're going into sound, the new energy source, and I wrote that book, what was it called? Quantum Entanglement, a Paranormal Point of View, where I was working with Einstein and my spirit guides to write that book. And quite honestly, I can't remember what's it. But I keep saying I have to go back and read all my own books.
Really is.
Yeah, when you're a channel medium, you're like a woman possessed. You think, oh yes, and you know it all while you're typing, and then you get to the end and you go, what's in it? But anyway, that's the point. When the kids are drawing, painting, building bricks, playing cars in the garage, or dressing a dolly and changing a diaper, all of this is acting out what they've observed, right? But underneath that is their past lives and their psyche and their spirit guides nurturing it to become bigger as they get older. And if you're clairaudient like me, you're hearing the dialogue all the time. When I was a child, I heard externally. Since my husband has passed over, I'm doing it again. I'm at the sink, I'm washing up, and they're telling me something, and without thinking, because I can hear it as loud as I'm hearing you, I respond out loud. And then I realize, because I can only hear my voice out loud, because their voice is all in my head and all around me. So there is a difference. And children, these young ones, will come to you, to their mothers, and say, there's someone talking to me. Who are you talking to? Often it's a one-sided conversation too. Warren did that a lot. And I did tell a story in my life story book about how he was playing in a box. And I'm thinking, who's he talking to? Because it's a one-side, it's like, no, don't get in like that, you'll break it. Quiet. Fuffle, fuffle, fuffle. Look what you just done, you ripped it. Well, at that point I thought, what? So I looked over the banister, and he's standing there looking at this box with a tear down the side. I said, did you just do that? And over the top, no, he did. And he turned to look at and then he's like, where's my friend gone? See, now that was the same for me when I was a child. I could see the spirits in the room. And so people always expect as adults that they have to have the spirit manifest in the room in front of them. But by the time we're an adult, we're so conditioned to believe that we cannot see. Because when we're young, like my mother did it to me, I'm telling her there's a face in the closet and she's doing her hand backwards and forwards like this through it. And I'm seeing the face in the middle. I say, you're putting your hand through the face. And she says, you got, again, I was so sick of this sentence. You have a vivid imagination. Every time, whatever I told her, so God, I didn't tell her in the end. But, you want to share. And if you've got a mother that's saying, no, it's not there because she can't see it, that puts you into a condition that what you see externally is not there. So you're in imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're an adult, your consciousness is saying, I don't have an imagination. I can't see the spirit. Unless you're fortunate like me, where you have very powerful guides who keep turning up, keep telling you and keep showing you. Then you go, okay, it doesn't matter what anybody says. I know what I'm seeing, hearing, touching, and feeling.
Yeah.
So when we're coming back to these youngsters, what we want to do is play with them games so that they can come on and tell us, oh, yeah, I had a dream. And what did you dream? Oh, that was fun. And just provide them with a safe environment to share what they like to do and what they think they see, what they feel, and so on. Because there are so many mothers, unfortunately, that say to their kids, no, it's not there, like my mother. It's not real. You're in imagination. And that puts a child down because, be an adult for a minute. And let's say you go into the school with your kiddies and one of the teacher comes up to you and says, your child's an idiot. Okay, you would be quick to defend them and say, no, they're not. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, with a mother telling her child you can't see what you're seeing, she's saying to the child, you're an idiot.
Yeah, and old habits die hard.
So we grow up and we tell our kids, you're an idiot. We can't do that anymore. We have to teach the mothers and fathers that what their child comes to them and says is real. And so, what I suggested to you is that we do some talks on here and then set up some classes for people to come in and ask questions, because that's the first step. If you're in doubt and you don't know anything, okay, ask a question and we'll tell you no lies. Right? But the first thing is, we're two women have got together, we know we're good at what we do, but we can't blow our trumpet morning, noon, and night and say, hey, I'm there for you, I know everything, and because then it comes across as egotistical.
Yeah.
So what we have to say is, we're here if you want us and you like the vibration and the sound of us, open the door, we'll answer, So I feel like I've said enough. I'm leading the way here, I know, but on the youngsters, now I'm ready to go on to the teenagers and adults when you are, unless you've got something you want to add there about the children.
No, I was just going to, well, you mentioned a valid point, and you went from writing to art and then to music. What most people don't know is that I am a triple threat. I just don't come out and say it because I don't, and it's not that I want to hide my gifts. It's because I don't want to come across as egotistical or overshadow the underdog. And so, because I like helping the underdog. And what people don't know is that I actually used to play 7 instruments.
See, I didn't know that. What did you play? You didn't tell me that secret.
I was a woodwind.
Oh, I could never blow anything.
I was always, in terms of choiring throughout high school, through church, whatnot, I was always the lead singer, shit. And that's part of, I used to be in an Army Reserve pipe band. So I used to do tenor drum, bagpipes, all that jazz.
Yeah. Well, in spite of the fact I was in England, London, we didn't get many bagpipes. My son, second son, Paul, he just picks up an instrument, plays it. Drums, he started off with wind instruments. Are you like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me though, here's the thing. I was born deaf. I was moderately severely deaf. So for someone like me who is able to speak and listen and do things normally, you wouldn't even know anything was wrong with me at all. And here I am. I can still play music. I can still draw. I can do all of those things that somebody of disability would be somehow hindered by.
No, you did a good job, obviously. But then again, you're a living, walking example where you said, my disability is not in the way, because you tapped into your psyche. And when your psyche overrides your consciousness, you naturally know you can do something, and you do it without question, especially when you're a child. But if we go from 7 into 18, the next number of years where a child is separating from mother, that child will use dad, a male person, let's put it that way, who's in the family, because today dad could be missing and grandpa's there or whatever, so there's so many different structures in family units today. And the old idea, just to mention it, in the Piscean period was all about men rule the roost, women are the second, third class thing that is stuck to them doing what they want. And babies are last on the list because they're stuck in another room. The children should be seen and not heard, kind of thing. To today, we all do everything together, hopefully. And dad comes home and does the washing up, and mum is cooking a loaf or something, and they're all doing it together, and that's what it should be like. But it can't happen unless the psyche is turned on. because in a normal family unit with traditions, routines, rituals, everybody focuses on what must be done. So this is where teenagers start to be rebels, because they don't see that this way. They're a different generation who are psychic, and they know that whatever mum and dad is fussing over is actually going to be history next year. So they don't want to do that. They want to do something else. So of course, teenagers have to be disciplined. And we've seen a tremendous amount of wayward psychic kids growing up over the last 20 years, but they're going to be the mums and dads. And they've learned what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important, because it breaks up the Piscean age bond, and it opens the door for the next generation to be able to grow up embracing their psyche, embracing their talents and skills, and more importantly, being human.
Yeah.
You know, so what is human? You ever thought about that?
I don't know. Last week I touched on existence.
Well, to me, human is saying, I make mistakes. And by making mistakes, I learn the hard way. But hey, look how better I become after when I follow through. And that's who we are. We have to evolve. If we sit in a room morning, noon, and night for the rest of our life, what would happen to us? We'd waste away. Mm-hmm. We'd be useless. We wouldn't have any controversy. We wouldn't have any tests. We wouldn't have anything. So aware of any psychic things. Went very dreamy, because online classes and different companies and people that are promoting stuff, there's a lot of opportunities for the teenagers to learn, you know, in a way to integrate their psychic ability daily. You know, I gave a student here just recently, last year actually, an example, very upset with the teacher, very angry with the teacher. And out of the blue, with going on and on about what's wrong with this teacher, I just sat and listened. And finally I said, have you realized what their home life is like? And she looked at me, why should I think about that? I said, well, the home life affects the outside life. When you're unhappy at home, when you're not getting the support and all the things you want, you hope that you'll go out into the world and get the support you want out there, but you're a stranger to them. They're a stranger to you. They don't know your issues. You don't know their issues unless you're psychic. And then if you're psychic, you pick it up. And you know that when they're standing there making an issue of you in front of the class, which is what happened, and it feels like you're putting you down, you know that they're not really putting you down, they're putting their family down. They transferred what the shit is, use that word because that's what it is, moved that over into this teacher, and you're saying, this is just like my mom, this is like my dad, she's put me on the spot, I hate her, right? And the teachers across the room say, this is just like my child that never does what I want him to do, blah, blah, blah. And there is the drama of their families enacted out in front of the whole class, their own little drama, their own little play.
Yeah.
So how many of those children are psychic? They all are. So they're all looking on and going, oh, she's unhappy at home. Oh, he's unhappy at home. You know, whoever it is.
Is that we don't recognize ourselves to be psychic in any way whatsoever, especially I'm speaking more to the skeptic here, but we have such thing as intuition, and intuition is that gut feeling that we should or should not do whatever it's a, we don't recognize it as that, but all those, to all of those skeptics out there that say, okay, well, psychic development is not a real thing, it's all this woo-woo pseudoscience and that kind of stuff. Well, how many of us actually have a gut reaction to something? How many of us have a act on instinct? That in turn is psychic development. We just don't.
Yeah, we said that in the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we have to remind people of that, because again, that's one of the things they push away instead of embracing and realizing just how important instinct is. You know, I'll give another example. It was late at night, I was in Japan. We were looking for some food because I've been teaching all night and starving. And as I walked in the door, my instinct psychometry said, this is a dirty place, don't eat here. So I did, because there was nowhere else to go. I got home, 2 hours later, I'm throwing up. I'd eaten something that was poison. Okay, so, you know, I couldn't blame anyone else. I couldn't blame the people that didn't wash down the table properly, and I dropped my egg on the table and picked it up and ate it without thinking. That's where I got the bug from. Not from the food cooked, but from the table. And our instinct will tell us. So psychometry, I'm coming back, we're going with the 5-year-olds. Psychometry is a scent of touch. So if I put my hand over this hand, I can feel tingling down here because I'm sending energy from this hand through my hand chakra. And I will say here that people think of Jesus on the cross as the nail going in here, the Romans doing it actually went up in the wrist, but our palms will produce, look at my energy. I'm going to open up. I did this the other day on the thing, and you'll see as I open up how my hands get redder. I'm not close enough to really show the red. Does it look pretty red your end? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, can you see these red blobs coming up on my hand here? Can you see those? Yeah. Okay, those are the hot spots. The white ones are the cold spots. So that's how we know hot and cold. But when we channel healing energy, the hot spots show up. And I've been doing this my whole life, so my hands are actually really, really red. Doesn't look anything like as red on there. But the bottom line is, this is our healing energy. And if you were to do that, and you do it around your head, you won't try it, even with a headset on. If you put your hands around your head and just be patient for a minute, you will feel your aura. Take your hands out as far as you can, and you're tingling. Can you feel that?
Yeah, I already feel it already. I did.
Well, we want some mums watching this to try and do this, because we want to understand what it feels like to feel energy, because that is part of psychometry. And going back to the infant baby, that's what baby's feeling when come out of the womb, is energy. And we don't remember it unless we got a temperature or something, and we feel not well, then we remember it. But there's all these joyful times when we're oscillating and vibrating energy out all around us, back and front and everywhere. Now, teenagers start to attune to that. Yeah. And they're in the playground and they're looking for a friend. And they're not listening, what are you talking about? And you're into drugs or something. They're looking for someone whose energy fits. And you're usually like attracts like. That's when, the law again. So when you're a lonely person, say because of family background and in school you don't know how to socialize, then who are you going to attract? Someone else who doesn't know how to socialize. I did a lot of that in school. So I was in a group of girls, small group of 5 girls, of which 3 usually stayed through all my life in schooling years. But those other 2 would come and go, because they wanted whatever we 3 had that they didn't have. And they'd get whatever it was and they'd leave. And then another girl or so on, because it was a girls' school. So I learned a great deal about empathy and sympathy vibration during those schooling years, where I knew I would never be Superwoman in that I wanted to play tennis and all sports I told you about before. I was always on the bench. I was waiting for someone to break their leg or something so I could play, very disappointing. But meanwhile, I could go and be with the people who were like me, not getting anywhere, and we would comfort one another. Okay, so what we're doing, we're looking, we're hearing, we're attuning to one another, we're feeling the auras, and we say, we are best mates, we are friends for life, or whatever it is. And I'll be there for you and I'll support you. What happens the minute you get this little group? The other group, who's the big group, who are all the up and I'm firing to go and I'm in the team and doing whatever, start picking on us.
Yeah.
Because we have something they don't have. Empathy, sympathy through the spirit. And they can feel that, these other kids, and they feel threatened by it. So they ridicule, they tease us, they pull our hair. I mean, I went through all sorts of things because we were different. Today, they're not different. Today, they're congregating together saying we want education that we know we want. For example, we discussed this on our own. The curriculum that we had to study, we were told, had to be all-rounder. And you can understand that from a point of view of education, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we instinctively knew we didn't need geography, or we didn't need history, or we didn't, whatever it was, and boring, don't want to do it, but the things that we like, they became the finer thing, the class to look forward to. Well, today, these youngsters, they want to get into everything. We were choosy. I want this, or no, I don't want that. The kids today, they want to try everything. And that includes drugs, alcohol, smoking, and anything else you want to mention, sex, having babies young. I mean, there's an endless number of things that I've seen from the 90s through to now of the younger people going through, including nude modeling, including, I mean, even now you see a movie like Outlander, and boy, is that passionate. And yet, if they'd have put that up in the 80s, they'd have been, no way could you watch that show. Right? Not even the adults are allowed to watch it. That would have to go on the sex, once. So look how far we've come in understanding, well, our bodies are bodies for us, a vehicle by which we can go around this earth and have experiences. What gives us the experiences is the psychic ability. So when you say, coming back to your drawing, that you're drawing those people, the psychologist in you, in my opinion, is expressing yourself and what you know through the arts of those types of people. Studious, I know you, I'm looking after you, but I've got boobies. I'm a woman, That says a lot, that picture, just by putting those glasses on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the kids today, if you showed them that, they're going to interpret. They will say, well, the mass of hair is strength, and the glasses is saying you're peeping over the top of the glasses. So you're saying, I see you with these eyes, not these glasses, So there's a lot of things there. That's just me quickly interpreting it. Okay. And this is what the youngsters will do because they love the tarot cards. And you got yours out recently, didn't you? And do some little mini readings with it. Yeah.
Right here.
So if there's anyone watching or listening to us, again, we can call. Did you give them a number to call in? I don't know. We did. We just.
The call-in number is 929-436-2866 with the meeting ID number. When prompted, 522-657-2748.
Well, I wouldn't have gotten time to write that down. But it's okay. But I want people to know that we're not just us talking. We're open to people calling in because questions give us more meat to answer, and that's important.
Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to the teenagers and this psychometry and finding people who fit in all the right places, as it were, for the years that we're in school. During that time, we go through every kind of sexual upset you can think of, every kind of physical, mental, and emotional upset relative to our sex, not sex activity, but I'm woman, you're boy, kind of thing. How do we mix? How do we integrate? How do we check things out? And it's the psychic kids who are always the ombudsman. They're in the middle. They stop them fighting. They comfort them. They do something in some way. How? By observation. They're watching the body language. They're feeling the energy. If someone's angry, they know they could be violent any minute. They're sensible in the way they talk to them and get them to not do that. So what am I saying here? Mums and dads, whether you're black, white, purple, green, yellow, who knows what, stop teaching yourself that they're Jewish, Buddhist, whatever, and that they are different and better than someone else, and start telling them whatever they sense is a lesson through their psychic ability to study psychology every day of their life in the way people talk.
Yeah, because psychic development is very similar, if not, psychic development and psychology go hand in hand with each other.
They do. In fact, they are one and the same. It's just that, I guess it's like saying when you use your psychic ability, you're looking through a magnifying glass and you can see all the details. Whereas when you're just looking with psychology, you're looking for the scratches and bumps and things that are obvious.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is a deterrent in that it does help a person, but it doesn't heal the wounds that are so deep inside that come from the young infant to the teenager and then on into the adult life. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who add up their whole growth period into adulthood as painful, tormenting, loss kind of scenarios where they can't socialize.
Mm-hmm.
They'll hold back. They'll sit with a beer or in a corner somewhere, or people come, would you like more? Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. They push people away because they're frightened to interact. And that brings me back to in school, looking for your mates who fit in your vibe. Now, what if you're a sports person? Okay, you're going to be out there swinging that bat and you're going to be psyching up with psychometry what that person's going to do for you so that you can be ready to do whatever you're going to do with your sport. And that really puts you on the edge of the chair with your psychometry because I don't want to miss it. I want to be tip top and so on. And you practice, and then the teacher comes along and says, you're hopeless. Mm-hmm. It's crushed your passion. It's crushed everything about who you are. Passion is so important, and teenagers have a lot of passion. Do you remember how you were as a teenager?
I don't know. I went through a lot when I was a teenager. All I knew is that I had to go about life a different way.
Mm. And, for me, my passion was all on the negative too. So passion, I want to say, gives us two sides, the happiness and the sorrow. So when we're drowned in sorrow, how can we be happy? If we're happy all the time, how can we learn anything without the sorrow?
Mm-hmm.
So all those kids who are in school with us, they were actually our testers.
Yeah.
And I know there was one girl that I remember, because I said I was in an old girls' school. There was one girl, she was a BITCH. I'm spelling it. In my world, my mum used that word. She used the bees. I suppose I can say it online today. People
You
don't
can
get
say it. It's
yeah. So my mum said, "Bloody, blimey, blast, and bitch," the bees. And when she was really, really mad, butter.
Yeah.
And so the F word and the S word and all these things that I hear today, I didn't even know they existed. Nobody said them in my world. And I saw the F word written up on a wall one day with my boyfriend. I said, "What's that?" He said, "You don't know?" I said, "No." I was still a virgin too. I said, "What is it?" He says, "That's fornication." And I went, "Fornication? What the hell are you talking about?" I was so innocent. And then he said, "Sex." I said, "Why did you say that in the first place?"
Now that word is not associated with well, yes, it is. Yes and no. It's associated with a lot of things. It's the ultimate replacement word for everything.
That's what I'm saying, and there's actually a program on television now where they're taking the swear words and using the connotations. Yeah, I did. I watched it. I watched about 3 of them. I haven't watched them all. But yeah, so that's the point. If you don't get the education about the words, or you don't talk about what you feel, you're in that box. You're never going to get out of it. You need someone who's going to come along and hit you over the head. And of course, in the teenage years, for the teenagers today, it has to be a psychic teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I'm very happy to know that some of my students that I trained in Japan are actually teaching in schools now, because they've been recognized over there. But can you imagine a school here in the States saying, "We need a counselor who's a psychic"?
I don't think that would ever happen. Not right now, but
But you see, in Japan, they will do that because they believe in their ancient religion of praying every temple all the time. And when you tell them, somebody's answering in your head in some way. So having a counselor who can be intuitive and tell you what you can't see, they're falling over themselves for that. And I still do that with clients online. But my students, I've got over 1,000 fully trained over 10 years with me, who are out there leaders now doing what they were. And then I've got so many underneath that, because not everybody completes every class and every course. But at least, now there are psychic classes and courses, not just by us, but by other people, that children should be introduced to, rather than watching these horror stories that frighten the life out of them of some demon that's going to come out of the dark closet and tear their body to bits. Why are people making movies like that? Because we went through the horror period, and our I was every night, Dracula's going to get me. Don't want my neck sucked, But of course, I had spirits in the room, and they would pick up things and make noises like that, and I mean, leave my things alone. I had one dandy kind of guy who was back in the 1600s, and he would come and jingle all my perfumes, and smell them. And I could smell them because in those days, when he'd open the bottles, he'd open them and put them, back together, because we had little bottles with dropper things in. And or he'd pick up my stones and things. Mm-hmm. At first, I was like, "Who's in my room? Someone's going to frighten me," with Dracula ideas. But given time and talking to him, I realized that he just liked to be around me and looking at all my things. And I asked him, why was he around me? And he said, "Well, one day when you're ready, we'll write." And his name was Pierre. And he wrote through me for quite a while, and then he disappeared. Mm-hmm. And I realized that according to as I grew and evolved in my teenage years, these spirit guides would change. You just get used to one. It's like, I had to refresh my mind and say, it's like going up a level in school, you get a new teacher. okay? Or maybe in some levels you knew that teacher existed, but you weren't old enough yet to have that teacher.
Exactly.
So there was all this aspiring to get to know more people. Well, the spirit guides were doing the same. So I just get to know one and think, oh, this is really someone's going to be with me for the rest of my life, and they disappeared. And then after a while, with them all coming and going, one day I was much older, my 50s, and I suddenly realized that through things that Zoroaster showed me, of transforming himself while I was in meditation. He appeared with like a black man with all these bones in around his body, and right here in front of my face. I was like, don't do that, you're shocking me. And he disappeared, it was black. And then I see this tiny, tiny little white light, and in it is something, and it's yellowy. And as it's walking towards me, I'm realizing it's human, Well, by the time he got up to me, he was dressed like a clown in a yellow suit with little white, red, green stripes and squares on it or something. And I was laughing. And then he dropped down, and his hair was all short. He dropped down, and he came up, and he was a white person with blonde hair. Then he dropped down out of my vision, he came up, and he was a Native American. And he dropped down, and he came up, and he looked like an Arab. And I finally realized what he was telling me is he can appear in any shape I feel comfortable with. And that is an important lesson to tell these teenagers, because if they're not hearing exactly who's in the room, and they're hearing bangings and knockings as I was, it's scary. And to have someone be able to say to them, you have an Egyptian guide or a French guide or whatever it is in some way, and they always are of the past, because we don't know the future. So we can't say, that, shall we say, let me think of someone. Well, let me take Socrates. When Socrates came to me and sat beside me, all I could see, because I was looking down at the ants, was his feet in sandals. I couldn't see the rest of him. I wasn't able to point and go like this and look at him, And that was something I really noticed through my teenage years. I never got a full picture of them. I only got bits. And usually it would be a side face like this, so they're not looking at me, or I could see the back of their hair or something. And so one day, after many, visits of partial visits, I said, "Why can't I see your face?" They said, "Because you'll jump out of your skin. Because you want to see us, but you don't want to see us. Because you're not ready." So this is what we have to do with the teenagers. I teach them with that book you held up. Expanding images with the Omni card. And I found out that in one day, long book, the big one. But anyway, one day, yes, thank you. And you can see in the background, it doesn't show up very well, that the card is there on the front of the cover as well. And the thing about images is they have, let's take the ribbon, for example, that you're showing, because that's really standing out there. What do you think a ribbon's for? Okay, now you might think, that's enough, thank you, I want to see you. I'm just talking about the ribbon. Okay, you might want to see the ribbon as an award, that someone has done something good and they're going to get some bow, prize, present, something. Whereas I might see a little girl with pigtails who's wearing ribbons. Or I might see a chocolate box, with a ribbon across it. Whatever we associate with what we see is where we go consciously, right? So part of what you have to learn to do when you're being psychic is not go with your rational mind. So if I saw a bow, I would look at that bow and I'd say, what do I do with this bow? Well, they might undo it. Undo a knot. What does a knot mean? There's a block. I need to undo a block somewhere. Why did they give me a bow? Oh, well, I used to wear them in my hair when I was a child. So maybe I'm remembering there was an instant when I was a child when I wore ribbons in my hair where I was upset. What's the emotion I feel right now? Well, I'm feeling negative. I'm feeling nervous. Okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? Oh, I've got a doctor's appointment. So what am I telling myself? Don't be a child. Don't worry like a child with a bow in your hair and go and see the doctor. Go with an open mind that you're going to get good news.
Yeah.
See, and you turn it around. And so when you're giving someone a reading with your images, you may pick up that they're nervous and worried and anxious, and you want to calm them and help them settle down. But their mind's running at 100 miles an hour with fears and worries and anxieties. So what do? You try a way to calm them with psychometry. Reiki, feel my hands. See they're red now. You see that? And so put some healing into their aura that brightens it up. When you see a person that's really ill, maybe close to death, their aura is navy blue, dark red, crimson red. There's flashes of white light that come and go with the friction of red and the blue. And you can tell generally where that is on the body. They might have green for their, bodily sort of green for their nervous system. I saw a lot of this after the war when Dad took me to the Suffolk regimental meetings. I sit on their lap and I would see all these yucky browns and reds, because red and blue together is brown. Mm-hmm. And if I saw brown, then I knew that they were really not earthing. They were fighting their emotions and their logic with the pain that they were having. So I would just sit there and be a ball of energy and heal them. Okay. But when you get adult, you can't just be a ball of energy and go, well, you could, I suppose, and just walk amongst all the misery and pain. But, we're so used to holding on to the misery and pain that we justify why to keep it. And teenagers do that all the time. And yet, as they come up against someone who's in adversity to them, they blow up. They get angry, they hit one another, whatever. There's this violent streak in us that comes up in the reason behind it is self-annihilation means nobody loves me, nobody cares. So some of us go down that road when we're psychic, and they attract earthbounds and they become negative. So we have to, because like attracts like in the mirror image. So if we got a negative child who's psychic, you can guarantee there's negative earthbounds around them. And earthbounds are people that have passed over, but they're still tied to the ways of the earth, so they don't want to leave. Maybe they're worrying about their husband they've left behind, or their dog they lost. Who knows what it is? Everybody is individual, and they're looking for someone to come into their life and say, there, it's okay, you can go to heaven now, and that's where mediumship comes in. And the thing is, some of these kids now, because they're so psychic, they're picking up people. My granddaughter just called me from England just a week or so ago. She said she walked into the living room and there was a man dressed in the early 1900 suit, and there was a woman dressed in the 1800 suit, and she wanted to know if they were earthbounds because they weren't looking at her. They were just sitting in the sofa. So I attuned to it and I said, no, these are not earthbounds. These are spirit guides that are showing you that they're there, but they're not facing you because you're still afraid. Mm-hmm. See, they're not the same thing as not appearing, doing sideways, that kind of thing. So I told her what to do, and I said, take some deep breaths, build up your aura, rebalance your chakras, and stuff like that. And then I talked to her a couple of days later on text, and I said, did they turn up again? She said, no. So I said, don't worry, they won't show up again until you're older and you've got more control over it. And she's reading my Expanding Images with the Omnicard book right now. So as she's been reading that, that's opened up her third eye, you see. So she didn't expect to see them sitting in a room. So that's the second thing, is to realize you cannot control what you're going to see. because your spirit guides are going to give you what you need to see, not what you think you want to see. And that's one of the things that so many students over the years have come to me and said, I want to see my dad, or I want to see something in the ancient days, like Egypt or something. And I have to explain to them that it's not that the family won't come, it's that you're still negative, and if they come, they'll get trapped here with your negativity. So they have to stay away. You know, when you're balanced about their passing, then the spirit guides will bring them to you at a time when you can be neutral and really get the energy exchange of saying goodbye. You know, and it's very important for people who pass on to say goodbyes. It is for us to say goodbye. But we can't do it when we're in misery and sobbing, and how could they leave me, and so-and-so murdered them, or whatever it was, however traumatic it is. That is not the time to bring them back, because they get stuck here as earthbounds. And then these poor kids are going to be seeing them, and they'll feel upset because they feel the person who's died's misery, you know, that they can't connect with their family, and then they get miserable. So it's like the rotten apple that I was talking about earlier on affects the good apples. So we have to spend a lot of time teaching these 7 through 18-year-olds how to protect themselves from negative earthbound spirits who will come to them, because like attracts like. So if your kid is angry, an angry spirit could turn up. Okay, then they're double whammy angry because they're channeling that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've had a number of people come to me over the years with their children who are angry, only to find that the reason they're angry is they've got angry earthbounds around. And just because parents can't see them or feel them because they're not trained, they don't know what their kid's going through.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why when we see out of balance or off behavior, we recognize it quickly as there's something wrong with my child, or my child there's ADHD or autism or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And even if a child does have autism, you know, some autistic children are great channelers. You know, I had one friend who's passed now, but she had twins, and one was autistic and the other was brilliant. But because he was so brilliant, he was insecure. You know, I mean, so I was working with them both. And then I made You and Can Do recordings, one for girls and one for boys. And if anyone's having a problem with your child, contact me, because I can give you that. It's free. And you can go to the site. You will tell them what the sites are.
Yeah, I can. When we finish up, I'll run.
Yeah. And we can send you those freebies if you sign up, because you need it. Okay, if you don't sign up, then we assume you don't need it, right? And then for signing up, you know, tell us what you're into, what you need. If it's something for your child, then tell us, because we have some very good audio hypnosis that I did, or that my husband did before he passed, which really worked. And I'm planning on making more hypnosis that we can give away as well from different issues. So, you know, there's a good reason to go to our websites and have a look. Yeah. So children, you know, are growing up, they're looking at their model parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. They're looking at their friends' parents. They're looking at housing. They're looking at the way people live. They're looking at the cost of food. They're looking at what they can and cannot do. And they are assessing in their own way through psychic senses, even if they don't know they're psychic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they come out with simple statements like, that's not for me. I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. And as a parent, you have to say to them, I need you to sit down and explain why. And be prepared for some out on a limb statement that doesn't really make sense. But by general chatting and showing an interest, you may well find that everything that your child has said is not their words, they're channeling the words of an earthbound or a spirit guide to you. And maybe you as a parent need to learn about earthbounds through your child, or you maybe need to learn about spirit guides through your child. We're all teachers and pupils, right?
Exactly.
So you've got 2 young ones. How are you feeling their psychic abilities coming along?
I know that one is extremely sensitive, and he is really, really smart and intelligent. He is probably, well, they're probably both crystal children, but or liquid crystal children. But what I will say is that they have different, very, very different personalities, which finds them in their empathic abilities to show compassion. But that is only because through conscious awareness and conscious parenting, that I offer a platform for my children to speak freely anything and everything they want. It doesn't mean that I have to understand them all the time. I give them that space to talk whatever they want to talk about.
And that is very important, very, very important and vital to a child's brain expressing itself, expanding its consciousness. I'm saying it, but it could be girl or boy. And it's the same with an animal. You know, if you ever had an animal and you're trying to train them, you know, don't go potty here, potty's over there, you know. And you have to do symbols and signs with animals because they can't speak our language, though they can understand words, which is amazing. But it takes all that time to train them. And then, just like humans, when they get old and decrepit, they lose control of their vitals. And then we're going, oh dear, we have to nurse and we have to do this, we have to do that, the same as adults. They teach us a lot of lessons, our pets.
Then, well, not only that, a lot of people, a lot of parents don't like the idea of conscious parenting because with conscious parenting, it allows, it basically says that whatever the child is expressing, let them express it. And say, for instance, if my child was upset about anything, or my child was acting out or misbehaving, there's a degree of boundary to that. But when we approach a child to, let's just say, tell them off, when we tell them off as an adult, we're going to the child and literally using our rage and our anger and our disappointment and projecting it onto the child, and the child's sitting there going, oh! And they're going to continually cry because in their minds, they're not being heard. There may actually be a problem. Like, for instance, so with my children, what I do is I actually ask them, I'm like, what's wrong? I talk them through the emotion. And eventually I find out that it's something really, really simple. They're upset for something really simple, or they misbehave for something really simple. And then you teach them the value of expressing whatever the fault they did and apologizing for whatever they need. You teach them that value, but you don't use your rage and disappointment and anger on that child because they're misbehaving when they could have been misbehaving for whatever reason. But the whole point is to control you. It's the discipline to control you. And so that has allowed the expansion and growth for my boys to actually go through the motions of being child while still practicing innocence at the same time.
And that is very important that a child is allowed to have their innocence, because once they get past 7,
that's it.
Yeah, there's just so much is exposed today, like I said, visually, physically, mentally.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that are actually quite against conscious parenting. But there are a lot of benefits because those children who are brought up through conscious parenting tend to show a lot more empathy, a lot more kindness, a lot more compassion, a lot more value to humanity.
Well, the ultimate thing is, I like to come back to an overview of those children I was talking about, the Hero Star, Liquid Crystal, and whatever else it was. So the bottom line here is, I want you to imagine you're in the spirit world, and there's billions of little speckles. That's us. We're energy, right? And we come together with hundreds or thousands of others who are all doing this at the same time, vibrating. We're sharing auras, we're sharing everything that we are. This one says, I want to be your mom. This one says, I want to be your kid, you know, whatever it is. We design our future relative to the universe's universal consciousness of oneness. Okay, I'm looking at my hands as well. So I'll make sure I get in the right place. So imagine that we need, my thumbs are, people are going to come down in the 1800s and develop washing machines. So they come down and they open up a washing house where the kids are employed to do the washing. And then this group, they're the next generation, they come down and they say that they're going to invent electricity. Okay, so we got electricity going on and they're trying and playing with this. And then we have another group that comes down and they're saying, well, I want to organize so that everybody gets education. And then another group comes down, they're saying, well, we want to make sure everyone's employed, and so on. So the ultimate thing is these groups overlap as they come down and incarnate. So every century, there is a big shift in consciousness, there's a big shift in practicality in the way we live, and there's a big shift in the purpose of life. And if you look back through every 100 years, you know, that we have a recorded history, you can clearly see the growth. You know, it's plain as a nose on your face. Doesn't take hard research, especially with computers today, to really see the transformations that we've gone through in just 300 years. Now, we're saying everything's speeding up because we've got so much computers worldwide talking, whatever it is. You get through a day when I was a child, school, whatever, and then go out and play on the streets, it's safe, come in just at twilight, you know, because we lived in England, so it got dark early. Come in at twilight and get your dinner, and then up, do your homework or read a book, you know, Dad puts the radio on. It was simple. Today, everything is complicated, especially with computers and all that going on. And yet these kids, these 2-year-olds, already know how to handle it. I wouldn't have known what to do, even if someone had stood over me and said, put your finger here and here. I'm still going, what? Because I've got that old programming. I'm calling you all the time. What do? I've just lost something, you know, because I don't have that in my head. There was no one saying press buttons. My closest to buttons was typing on an old-fashioned 1940s typewriter.
If it wasn't typing, it would be a notebook.
Yeah, but you see what I'm getting at, though, is that we can't talk to these children about psychic development, spirituality, unless we come up to their states of consciousness and accept them. Like it's okay to be in a gay relationship. It's okay to not take regular medicine, instead take herbs. It's okay to go to school on Monday, Friday, and Saturday and study what I want to study rather than what the rest of the world says I should study. And parents are homeschooling, so they're able to choose what the children that, you know, what they wanted to teach. You know, once we get past math and English and all that, obviously everybody has to have that. But there's nothing to stop them saying, okay, we're going to do paper mache now. You know, or okay, we're going to get a piece of lino and we're going to make a a design on it and paint it or something, you know. Well, they get that in kindergarten, and then they get up to first grade. All that goes out the window. The arts are pushed away, the sports are pushed away, and then they go into greater school. Okay, we have to fundraise, we have to find the money for sports, we have to. What happened to the sharing of parents? What happened to the sharing of kids? And it becomes an event to go and watch the games and see your kids running around or doing whatever. Well, parents are working 2 jobs. Parents are running around upside down trying to, pick them up. You know yourself, you're doing that. Picking them up, putting them back, picking them up, putting them back, whatever it is. I had the same thing when my children were young, but I didn't have a TV interfering. I didn't have a computer interfering. So, take them to school, pick them up after school, go to tap classes, go to judo classes. I was always running them somewhere. But I didn't have anything distracting me from what I was doing. And today, parents find it very hard to be 100% focused. I can see the difficulty being a parent today.
We have a listener here that's just written up on social media. Scott has said, goes back to the first time you felt that feeling, how, when, and why. Going back and revisiting what made you feel that way and change it. We are expanding the oneness. We are raising them and they are raising us.
Exactly. Well done. Yes. So that's what we've been saying in a nutshell the way through, really, is that as we adapt and teach them, they teach us back. Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom. We're saying it for years. And that wisdom is channeled. Because they're not blocking it. They don't know to block it. They don't know it is not something they shouldn't say yet till they go to church, synagogue, or whatever. And then someone says, you're not supposed to do that. Don't open your mouth. Don't speak. Just listen. Pay attention, because this is the important news.
Yeah.
And so, I'm nothing against Muslim faith, because if you really look at all the wordings that Muhammad challenged, the Quran is not about what the oneness is. It's about how do we deal with daily issues. And when you think that the ISIS and all that came out of that, there's nothing in it, if you read it, about going to war and killing people and so on. It's quite the opposite, where Muhammad was saying things like, if you have an issue, you have to think about it and you have to feel it and you have to think, why is this happening in my life and how can I change it? He was, taking all the things from the past and putting them together. So Jesus, Siddhartha Buddha, the philosophy of Zoroaster, all these things were combined in Muslimism. That's a word. But again, in their religion, just the same as in our religion with Catholicism, it got screwed up.
Exactly. And it's because we want to give an interpretation that how do I say this? We want to give an interpretation that is to our own benefit rather than what the benefit for all.
And that is the selfishness. That's the side of us that says, I want to be safe. I don't want to have anyone upsetting my apple cart. And yet here's these teenagers who are so psychic, trying to tell their parents, I see things, I know here, I understand, or whatever. And the parents are saying, just like my mother, you're off the wall. You're different terminology today, but you have a vivid imagination. It was basically saying, I'm off the wall, I'm ridiculous, you shouldn't be able to do that, you can't do that, you stop that now, and today parents are so frustrated and angry with their own self because they can't get everything together in such a harmonized way that they feel that they're failing and they pass it over to the children. But I tell you, the religions like the Mormons, there are some where they have learned to listen and to pay attention and to believe in the power of the spirit and the soul and vibration. So they're a little model on being clean and perfect. But where is this world clean and perfect?
Yeah.
You know, that was another example of taking things to the extreme. What we've been learning through all these years, in my opinion, is adaptability. You have to be able to adapt in the blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't, if you're sitting with a Muslim and they're talking about whatever's going down, if you argue with them and you know, try and impose your religion, or even if you were doing psychology or whatever it is, you're not going to get anywhere.
No, you're not.
No. You know, there was somebody I was working with and talking with about judgment and body, cellular neuromuscular memory, body, and talking about how we have surgeries and we have pain and we're asleep and we don't remember any of it. But the brain does, because not every part of the brain is asleep. After all, it's still making your heart tick unless the doctor stop it. But, you know, whatever's going on up here is going on in your body. And so I was talking to someone about the control that the brain has psyche-wise over something like surgery, and how we can mark the body with the pain and suffering from the subconscious, deep subconscious, while we're under the knife, and not realize years later that this repeated pain that keeps happening here is because of the position the doctor put us on, not the surgery, but the position, shall we say, that the doctor laid us on that table, where a hip bone was digging into the bed and hurt you.
Yeah.
And you don't know you even had that happening, but it has. So it's very important that we dump stress, fear, pain, anger, guilt. And that's why I got into the pterogram therapy and all my crystal work over the years. And yeah, so I just want to add there, because I'm going somewhere with that the kids today, these young'uns, are so stressed, and they love the crystals because they know it makes them feel better, because it cleans out their aura. So mums, buy your kids crystals.
I was just going to say, with that said, do we want to continue on to the top of the hour, or do we want to start wrapping up?
I think we should start wrapping up, and you should share with them our links and things like that, and how they can get a session with you or with me if they want online. You know, we can do it with Zoom or whatever. But they first got to let us know they're even interested.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a couple of listeners listening with us right now. I know Scott there. Welcome, Scott. I know we do see you there, so don't worry, we haven't forgotten you. But for those who are wanting to know more about what we've been talking about all of this evening, please go to Amazon and purchase this book, Discover Your Baby's Spirit, A Mother's Guide. You'll learn all about that and more. So it's weird going off on this background. Another book to get is Spending Images, the Omni Card. Recommended that book too. Definitely recommend this book.
My life story. I really had to put down my barriers and be truthful, and that was hard. To admit that I'd had alien encounters, for example. Now I can even brag about it because everybody else is talking about it. But back when you couldn't talk about it, you know.
Last week's show, I was kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't have it with me, but I do have it right here, and that is this book. This is the book from the show from last week. If you haven't already watched it, go watch the archive. It's up on YouTube. But this is the book that it was relevant to. And so please go check out the archive, and please go get this book as well. If not, alternatively, you can go to my website, Soma Fusion Media. You're going to find all of my books and all of Margaret's books. There's a whole heap of collection up there from not just us two, but I do have a publishing service that I offer to people. So yeah, go over there, go check out all the shows up on Soma Fusion Media. I'm sure that there's a show out there that you want to listen to it. If it's not this one, you should be listening to it, but that's okay. There are other shows to choose from.
Yeah.
air this show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 4 p.m. Mountain Time. We are up on YouTube, Soma Fusion, My Body and Soul. We're up on Facebook, so go to the Soma Fusion Media page. And of course, Margaret also has Facebook pages that she can be found on, like The Journey to an Unknown World, Easy Peasy Solutions, Dr. Margaret Speaks, the Samaras Education Center, and
Universal Christchurch.
No, that's another one.
Yeah.
There's 5 of them. No, there's 6. So I can't remember every single one of them, but that's the gist of it. You can find them everywhere. And Journey to an Unknown World radio show. If that's another page, you can go there. We put up all the archives on that page, as well as all the other pages, obviously. So you're not going to miss a thing, regardless of whatever page you're going to follow on Facebook. You can also go over to soma-fusion.com. You can also go over to Journey to an Unknown World, Dr. Margaret Speaks. That channel is up on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Dr. Margaret Speaks. You can also go over to the websites, go look at the stuff that we have up there now. Some things are still under maintenance, so please be aware of that. But do go over to the subscribe, sign up so that we know that you're there. If not, shoot us a message, let us know what you're interested in. And what classes that you want to participate in, and what you would like to hear us teach. You can, for those websites, you can samarascenter.com, it's easypeasysolutions.org, samaraseducationcenter.com, theuniversalchristchurch.com, and askdrmargaret.com as well.
Can I interrupt just to say, don't forget, if you have a child that's in trouble, we sign up because they want to have, the hypnosis for children. You can do.
I am trying to figure out what my son just gave me. See, here's the thing. You remember how you were just talking about children see us adults do things? He's seen me do art. Look at him.
Oh,
I just got handed this.
Yeah, Mummy.
I don't know what it is.
It looks like he's doing you talking or walking on the street, and he looks like he's looking for support and help. I don't know, but he looks like he's going shopping.
Well, he has come in here twice since we've been on asking for a melted cheese toast.
Oh, well, maybe that's one of it. He's got the cheese in the middle of the square then.
Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. At least he's got a love heart.
Yeah. Well, please, I'm starving.
That's okay. But so they're all the websites you can go to. Of course, we go to our partners in iEvolveTV.com, and also Saavi Lifestyle Co., where we empower women through fitwear. Saavi, that's Saavi, SAVVI.com/somafusion/shop. So
they've got some nice stuff. They have got some nice stuff.
Really good stuff. I am currently wearing my fitwear. I got my beautiful leggings on. I can't take them off, so nice actually. But yeah, I do recommend you go to all of those websites and more. And of course, do you have any final words, Margaret?
No, I just want to say to people, I know that sometimes what I say is overwhelming, but even if you only take one sentence that one of us has said, that will bring a change.
Exactly.
So don't dismiss everything. Just try and work with what you took.
The whole idea is for you guys to ask us questions. We don't claim to know everything either. So, but together we can learn.
So next time we come on, I hope some of you would turn up and ask questions.
But until then, we will see you next week. Merritt Square at 7 o'clock Saturday evening Eastern and 4 o'clock Mountain Time. Until then, have a beautiful weekend.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.